Did you see the cover of Barron's over the weekend? I opened up my front door on Saturday and I immediately thought of Larry and King Dollar, or what has now become Scullery-made dollar. It says simply, it's time to raise rates, Ben, reasoning that it's the only way to prevent the dollar from collapsing and inflation from getting out of control. Is the paper, and more importantly, Larry Kudlow, right? Joining us to discuss, Steve Liesman from Santa Barbara. We also have Rick Santelli from the CME in Chicago. Larry has been beating this drum for a long time. It seems like a lot of people now are getting on board. Rick Santelli, let me start with you. Some people are asking the question, too soon, too late. It doesn't seem like it can be too soon anymore, or do you think I'm wrong about that?
Well, I think that they need to raise rates. I think it probably could have been done even in an earlier time fashion, but it's a moot point. I just don't think that there's any way they're going to. Just look at today. Look at the dollar. Look at the interest rate side. Look at stocks. When a 10 o'clock Eastern headline came out from the New York Fed that ignore the man behind the curtain with the mop, we're not going to actually put it in any puddle anytime soon.
Steve?
I just think it's too early. I think you have 9.7, 9.8% unemployment and rising. Very little indication in the numbers of any incipient inflation. And I think focusing on the dollar is the wrong policy. I just don't think it matters. It's transcendent that much for the U.S. economy what the dollar does. I think it would be really focused on the wrong policy to worry about the dollar. Getting the U.S. economy right is the right policy.
But what about what
and the
gold and
dollar
oil
will
are
follow.
telling you? I mean, it's not just the dollar. Look at what commodities are telling you.
Yeah, but what about the general price levels, Melissa? There is really no increase at all in the general price level.
Yes, there is.
Oil's going to go up. Gold's going to go up because, Larry, let me just finish the point.
The consumer
because
price
of
index.
Speculation of people, and I think they're going to end up having that trade wrong over time. I agree it's been the right trade. Now, I could see the idea of the Fed trying to take back some of the emergency policy response, say a 50 or a 50 here in some period of time, and trying to cap that increase or the market pricing in more. I could see the Fed adjusting, but now is not the time. There is really deflation is the biggest concern right now.
Rick Santelli, just on that point, the consumer price index has increased more than people thought in each of the last 2 months, almost 4% at an annual rate. That's point number one. Tackle that, and then I got a follow-up. But tackle that CPI point, please.
To me, CPI, I look at what it costs to live, and I'm looking at energy prices, commodities, and the weaker dollar. And Mr. Liesman's talking about they need to get policy right. Exactly what policy is there that the Fed's implementing other than just throw money at it? What's the policy? What are they fixing?
Well, Rick, I think if you look at a very select basket of goods, prices are getting higher. What about buying your car, Rick? Is that more expensive now?
Oh, yeah, we do that every couple of weeks, don't we? They'll have more clunker
number
programs.
Of things you're out there, Rick. Some food prices are lower. A lot of things are lower, Rick. If you want to just talk about what's higher, tell me why the inflation numbers keep coming in or have been coming in, some of them at negative rates.
Look who calculates them. Look who revises them.
No, Rick, you keep blaming the data, but where is your other set of data, Rick? Why don't you go out in Chicago, get a basket of goods, and let's see what's happened. What's happened to housing, Rick?
To see you and Mr. Bernanke and all the great champagne economists say the dollar doesn't matter. It isn't. It's never too late, Steve, until they unplug the press.
Because you're buying too much French wine, Rick.
I drink French wine.
From
that's
California.
Let me ask one question.
You buy your California wine, it's not a problem.
I can barely afford to drink milk.
Rick Santelli, milk is very good, especially skim milk. Rick, let me ask you this. In the Andrew Barry article,
milk he's buying.
One of the best points I thought he made, he says the Fed is pursuing a crisis accommodative policy, but what they should be pursuing is a normal accommodative policy since the crisis has apparently passed. And that's how he gets to a 2% Fed funds rate instead of a 0. What's your thought on this issue of a normal versus a crisis policy?
I think he's got it nailed. It's absolutely true. And Larry, we've been talking about this for 7 months. We are beyond what was originally framed. We're beyond the Bush administration. Oh, yeah, exactly. How many dollars have you said would be down at this level a half a year ago, Steve? I've been on the weak dollar isn't good for America for a long time, and a lot of Americans are starting to figure out that the Fed doesn't have their interests at heart.
What's happened, Rick, to prices of Chinese goods in American dollars.
Listen,
Nothing.
Steve, nobody can
They've
afford
remained
them
unchanged.
because they don't have
block.
enough jobs, Steve.
Rick,
that's the policy
there
we
is
ought to be looking at.
I agree. Right. The Fed is pursuing a policy of higher unemployment, right? That's your
it
point,
certainly
right?
seems as though the road they're on isn't impacting that in a positive way. Goldman's earnings don't seem to be correlated with hiring.
Money doesn't create wealth, by the way. Money, more money doesn't create wealth. It doesn't create productivity. It doesn't create capital formation. I mean, that's just some of the issues involved here.
But it's
Rick Santelli. What about these tripartite reverse repos we've been hearing about this morning? Is the Fed, this is a rehearsal? Where do you read that? Can you inform us? Is there anything going on here of substance and policy content?
You know, I personally don't think there is. I think that ultimately one of our guests said you need the plumbing right, and I think I agree with that. But I certainly also agree with the notion that the Fed would rather go well beyond the point where they should have tightened because they don't want to risk being wrong or early, and I'm not sure what wrong is defined as in this case.
Okay.
No, Larry, I think
Steve,
it's important
quick,
to talk about the staging of this. Very quick. The Fed is going to take back some of the special programs over time, use these reverse repos. It's a long way before it does that, before it actually raises rates. There's a lot of stuff to mop up before it does that. It will hit those puddles Rick talked about, and that'll be before it ends up actually raising interest rates.
Okay. Well.